scripture this morning is taken from Matthew chapter 28, 18 through 20. And then following that, we'll turn to Acts 2:47. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Now, Acts 2:47. Praising God and enjoying the favor of all people, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved.
Is getting underway. I know it's only about 11 hours and change old, but we can still get it off to a good start. And does anybody still make resolutions? I had to do it once in 4th grade, and we had to come up with some really outrageous number, like 20 of them. I didn't know what a resolution was, and I think I got 3 of them out of the way. But some do make New Year's resolutions, and people who claim to know these things and study these things came up with the top 5 resolutions that people tend to make. Now, just in your mind, think what the top 5 might be. And we'll do a sort of a half of a David Letterman. You remember his old top 10 list. We'll do the top 5 New Year's resolutions. Here we go. Number 5, let's take up a new hobby. Anybody ever resolved that? Whenever I hear people say that, it's always vague. They never say, "I want to take up fishing or photography or something." It's just, "I want to take up a hobby." Make more money. A lot of people might have that. I had that as a resolution one year, but I had to quit when the Secret Service showed up and wondered what I was doing. That's when you got that. Improve relationships. We always have those that we like to improve and try and do better with. And then stop smoking. That's one of the tough ones. And then what do you think number 1 is? Number 1, losing weight. The battle of the bulge, whatever you want to call it. That is the number 1 resolution that people tend to make. Now, do they stick with any of these resolutions? Well, I don't know. Maybe like the guy who's standing on the scale and then sucking in his gut as he's looking down, and his wife says, "That's not going to help you any." He said, "Sure it will. It's the only way I can see the numbers on the scale down there." But at this time of year, all the health clubs see a spike in their memberships. December, January, February, and into March, then it kind of levels out, then it starts to go down. A lot of times because now we're getting into the summer and people are going to be outside. They don't want to tie themselves down to working out at a gym. But then again, there's a lot of them that realize, "I'm not using this, so I'll just won't renew it." And then you've got all the other resolutions that we tend to make but don't always keep. In fact, it's, again, according to those who claim to know, by about the middle to the end of January, most people's resolutions have kind of gone by the wayside. But I got to thinking about 2023, and about the resolution that we could make. And, we're coming out of COVID. I think it's going to be here, okay? It's not going anywhere. We're going to have to deal with it. We might have other outbreaks where maybe we have to go back online for a week or 2 or put masks back on or whatever. But people, I think, are just moving on and just dealing with it. And we've been out and done some door knocking, had some success, made some good contacts. So I got to thinking, for 23, do you think we could try to win 4 souls from outside the congregation this year? I wanted to put that out. See, that's 1/4 for 2023. If this were 2024, I'd say 4 and 24 or something like that, something catchy. But, next year is a presidential election year, and if Biden gets renominated, you'll know there'll be people at the convention saying 4 more years, that'll be the chant, 4 more years. We could maybe do 4 more souls. Maybe something like that would work. And where are we going to find them? Well, our neighbors, our co-workers. Debbie and I have approached some people through the school and that about maybe having a study or about salvation. If you know someone, make the introduction. Have me go along, or somebody with you. We'll make the introduction. We'll work with them. We'll see what we can do to add some souls this year. And remember, we're not talking about joining the church. Remember, we add to the church, or rather, the Lord adds to the church those who are being saved. And notice it was something that happened daily. So you don't have to wait till Sunday or Wednesday. I don't know what day of the week. Over in chapter 4 of Acts, there's 5,000 people that were converted to. Off the top of my head, I don't think it said the day of the week. What day of the week was the Philippian jailer baptized on? It doesn't say the day of the week. That's not important. Nor is the time of day. I've baptized people as early as 6 o'clock in the morning, and I personally baptized as early as about 11 o'clock. I've been at a couple of baptisms that were after midnight. So time of day doesn't matter. If someone is ready, they're ready, and that's the time to do it. And remember, this is not the idea of shoving religion on people. Jesus said, go and teach. So we teach by having dialogue. We teach by letting people ask us questions, and we answer the questions, and we might even ask them some questions back. That's how you teach. You don't force people. And so let's look at a New Year's resolution that we can keep, that we can all work on, and encourage everybody here to resolve to share Jesus with somebody this year. With somebody. Pick a person. It doesn't have to be a lot of people. I found out after the fact that the roommate in college who studied the Bible with me had decided that he was going to convert somebody during that year. We had a couple of classes together. I just happened to be his target. And so, you can thank him or blame him for me being up here, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. It's up to you. Your call. But the Great Commission, Jesus said, go into all the world and teach. He wants us to go and present the gospel, and we teach it. You got to be a thinker if you want to be a Christian. It's meant for people to think. That's why it's teaching. That's why we make disciples. We make students. And it's a lifelong process. We're always going to be students. And Jesus wants us to go out into our community and teach people about Him. And remember, when He ascended and He gave these instructions about going into all the world, you notice He didn't list a plan B? You notice that when He said, okay, go into all the world, you look at Matthew, look at Acts, go into all the world and teach. Oh, and if that doesn't work, here's plan B. I want you to do this. And if that doesn't work, here's plan C. You know what? We're it. Right here. We're plan A, B, C. It's up to us, all of us, working together to be able to tell people about Jesus. And He wants all of us to have a part in that carrying the gospel out to people. And we don't have to go overseas to have a mission field. Just walk out the door here. We got people right here in town that don't know Jesus, who are not Christians. We got a mission field right here. So adding more souls, that means convincing people of their need for Jesus. Is that something that is going to be easy in this day and time? It gets a little tougher as time goes on. But we got to put forth the effort. There are going to be people out there. The problem is just finding them. And many times you're not going to find anything unless you ask for it. One writer said we need to go unafraid, go with a message of love, and go with the knowledge of divine presence. We have everything we need in the Scriptures to tell people about Jesus. We don't need all these modern revelations and things. We've got what we need. And even if you're someone who doesn't consider yourself knowledgeable, if you're a Christian, you know the plan of salvation. You can teach it to someone. Don't worry about having all the arguments against Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, or whatever group. Just know the book, know the plan, and you can go out and be able to share that knowledge with people. So how do we add 4 more? A couple of pointers here. Number 1 is have a noticeable sincerity. Romans 12, let love be without hypocrisy, abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. And then Peter said to lay aside all hypocrisy. Sincerity. Laying aside hypocrisy. Now remember what a hypocrite is. Hypocrite is what? An actor. Somebody who knows they're playing a role. Not someone who makes a mistake, maybe occasionally says, that's not a hypocrite. And really, someone once told me we all play the part of a hypocrite at some time. He told me if you want to get away from hypocrites, dig a hole in your backyard, jump in it, and have someone cover you up with dirt. And you're still going to be down there with one hypocrite. That it affects all of us at one time or another. But we have to actively seek other people and ourselves seek Jesus more ourselves and make better application of the Scriptures to ourselves. And when we look at what Peter says about laying aside all hypocrisy, the idea there is that we become genuine. We don't like to do that sometimes. But the idea is let them see the real us. They're going to see then that, oh, you mean that God can use you and that you're not perfect? Yeah, he used David too. David wasn't perfect. Look at Noah. Noah had some issues after the flood. And look at his descendants. And so you don't have to be perfect. That's the whole thing. You don't have to be perfect to be a Christian. We should strive to do better. And when it comes to sincerity, our English word sincere, when he talks about a sincere faith or a sincere love, our English word sincere comes from a Latin word that means without wax. And in the days, they had, believe it or not, they had unscrupulous businessmen back in those days too. And they would be selling their pottery wares, and sometimes they'd be cracked. And so they would take wax and fill it in and try and cover it up. Well, if you rubbed it hard or held it up to the sunlight, got some heat on it, the wax would melt. And so to help out their customers and let their customers know that my business is on the up and up, I would put my pottery out there and I put a little sign with that said Sincerus. Without wax, this stuff is good. It doesn't have any flaws in it. And when it comes to us, to let our love be sincere, that is, we strive to not have any flaws in it. We don't have anything covering it up. In Romans 12, what people need to see in us more than anything is that we are sincere about our faith, that we are living our faith. I've worked with people who we had no idea they were Christians because they didn't live it. And on the other hand, I've known some people that were very good about living their faith. In Acts chapter 2, when the first church was established, you notice they broke bread, went daily from house to house. They didn't just wait for Sundays or Wednesdays. They had a genuine, sincere desire to be with one another, to build one another up. And there's nothing that's going to turn people away, of course, more than phony Christianity. There's quite a bit of that in the world. Quite a lot of people who are claiming to be Christians, but they aren't. And I'm not just talking about the people who are in church on Sunday after having spent a night out at their favorite watering hole. I'm talking to people who will say, yeah, I'm a Christian. Okay, so what do you think about the Bible? I always like to ask them that question. Well, I don't try to take it too seriously. And then we're going to have a problem. Or, yeah, I take the Bible seriously, but not literally. Now, think about that for just a minute. How are you going to do that? I'm not going to take what Jesus said about living a Christian life or about how to become a Christian literally, and granted, there is some figurative language in there. Then I'm not going to take it seriously. So we do need to take it seriously. We do need to be literal about it. We got to meet this lady who went to visit a friend and got to her friend's house and thought she locked the keys in the car. Went and called this before cell phones. Went and called her husband. It's an hour away that she drove. And the keys are in the car, locked, and so she calls him. All right, I'll get there as quick as I can. I'll bring the spare set. Gets off the phone, goes out to the car, and gets to looking around and pulls the handle on the back door. What do you think happens? Opened up. A friend of hers said, well, what are you going to do? And she said, I'm going to do what any red-blooded American wife would do. She locked the door and closed it with the keys on the inside. You see, we like to cover up our imperfections, don't we? We like to come in and just, everything's all right, everything's cool, even though we're torn apart inside by various things that are going on in our lives. We like to hide those imperfections. We like to put the wax in there. And so people don't see them. But we need to be more sincere also, if you want to share Jesus with people, have a conviction about it. Look at Jeremiah 20, verse 9. His word is in my heart, a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. And then Paul, when he arrived at Mars Hill, I get the impression he'd never been in Athens before. And he goes around looking, and he sees all of these idols, these temples, these altars, and it really provoked him. It bothered him. If he had to go home that night and go to sleep, it would have kept him awake. And so, what does he do? He gets up there, he finds this altar with the inscription to the unknown God. Well, folks, let me tell you about this unknown God that you've got this altar to. It's kind of like what I try to do at Christmas and Easter. You think you know about Jesus. Well, let me tell you what the Discovery Channel isn't telling you. Let me tell you what the media sources aren't telling you. Let me tell you what the liberal denominations out there who don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, or don't believe the Virgin Birth, don't believe most of the Bible. Let me tell you what the truth about Jesus is. And use that as an opportunity to open some doors, just like Paul did here. When you look at it historically, it's estimated there were approximately 30,000 different idols and statues and temples and altars in Athens at that time. 30,000. That's roughly the population of Danville, give or take. So just imagine each one of us could have our own personal idols, altar or temple to worship or worship in. That's a lot. I don't know what the population of Athens was at that time, but it was still a pretty good-sized city. I know today it's a pretty good-sized city, but that's a lot. And so it bothered him. He had a conviction to tell these people about Jesus. I read this account while I was preparing for this lesson. It's a preacher in southern Ohio that goes by this, it's not this one, but it's a mosque similar to this one when he goes to visit his parents. And he said one day it finally hit him, and he had a Paul in Athens moment. Now, I don't know if he actually went into this mosque or not, but he said it did cause him to become more aware of telling people around him about Jesus. Because people around us have got all kinds of false gods, false religions. I mentioned last week how atheism really is a religion, and when you go to some of these countries that are officially atheist, what do you see? Well, you go into Red Square in Moscow 40 years ago, a huge picture of Lenin, or pictures of Castro in Cuba. There's their God. They basically deified those people. And this same preacher in Ohio I was telling you about, he mentioned that there's a large grocery chain with a headquarters out there, and in their sales department they have this sign hanging up, telling the salesman, before you try to sell your product, be so convinced of its superiority that when you're finished, people will be more anxious to buy than you are to sell. Now think about how we could apply that to our Christianity. You know, that Christianity is so superior to anything else. The Christian life is so superior. Christian doctrine is so superior to everything else. I want that person to be more anxious. I want them to beat me into the baptistry, okay? I want, if they're ready to be baptized, I want them here going in and waiting in the water for me to get, something like that. They are that excited about it. And they're wanting it more than I'm trying to teach it to them. That's his point. Because if you don't believe in your product as a salesman, and if you ever sat with a salesman who you could tell really didn't believe in what he was trying to sell you, an insurance salesman or a car salesman. Now, I had a friend of mine that sold cars. He loved his car selling job. They were selling Chevys, but he had a coworker that was driving a Toyota. Nothing wrong with Toyotas, you understand. But what does that say to your customer if you're trying to sell them a Chevy, but your Toyota's parked over here? Or if you own the restaurant, but you won't eat there, you keep going to the place across the street. That doesn't say a whole lot to build confidence in customers. Now, what about us as Christians? If we're not displaying a Christian life, if we're not talking about Jesus, what does that say about our confidence in Jesus? If we really believe it, then we should be sharing it. Go back to Jeremiah for just a minute. If I say, I'll never mention the Lord or speak in his name, his word burns in my heart like a fire. A fire in my bones. Do we have that fire in our bones that we can't wait to go out and tell somebody? When when my dad used to give me my allowance and I wanted to go buy something, he'd say, boy, that money's burning a hole in your pocket, isn't it? Is Jesus burning a hole in us that we want to get out there and share it? Jeremiah is the kind of conviction that we need. It's a fire that just won't stop burning. And I want to tell somebody this year, pick a person or two over the course of this year that we can go out and share and tell them a fire that just will not stop burning. Because enthusiasm will go a long way towards convincing somebody about Jesus. That's one of the things I notice sometimes when I'm out is people who are enthusiastic about their jobs. Even if they don't really want to be there that day, they still manage to show some enthusiasm. And you see in sports teams, that's what they look for, like enthusiasm. And you can tell the difference between someone who's really excited about what they're doing and about what they're trying to sell you and someone who isn't. And with the Christianity, it's the same thing. They're going to know if we're excited or enthusiastic about it. And a little enthusiasm can go a long way towards winning souls. And then consider spiritual reliance. We can't do this on human effort alone. If we want to pursue a goal of growing by 4, or even by 5, or how many, adding souls to the kingdom, winning souls, we got to remember that that God has given us what we need, and to rely on that tool, the Bible, and what it can do. It's amazing what the Bible can do when people actually start getting into it and actually read it for themselves and not just listen to media or friends or whoever. But there's 4 questions to ask as we're considering. And number 1 is, do you believe that only Jesus can change a person and save their soul? Do we really believe that? Or do we just believe Jesus is one path among many to get to heaven? If that's the approach we're going to take, then there's really no point in trying to evangelize. But I believe the Bible's pretty clear. That Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, the life, definite article. And he made it very clear that he is the only path we're going to take to get to God. And the fact that there is even a path for us fallen humans to get to God on, we should just be thankful for that. Second question. You praying for anyone by name? Debbie and I have got some people that we're praying for. And by name, your co-worker, friend, neighbor, relative, parent, sibling, anybody by name that you can pray for. And if you want to share that, we'll be glad to pray with you for that person. What about our duty to pray for the lost to come to Christ? Pray for the lost to have softened hearts and minds so that we can give them the gospel. And then do you understand our duty to be a Christian influence on the lost? Now, when I became a Christian, a lot of the folks around me did not like wearing T-shirts that had religious themed messages. They thought that was demeaning. But then one day I had a shirt on, and it dawned on me that if I walk into Walmart or Meijer or wherever, and I've got a shirt on that says Jesus saves or whatever, John 3:6, whatever, I'm a walking billboard for the Lord, aren't I at that point? I mean, it's, pretty visible. And that serves as a reminder to me of who I'm representing. And I've got a pretty good collection of shirts that I wear occasionally around, and it could be, I don't know if it's influenced anybody or not, but it does remind me to be that influence, to watch my conduct. My mom used to tell me, mind your manners. Well, that shirt kind of serves as a reminder to mind my manners when I'm out in public. Several years ago, one of the last crusades that Billy Graham had was here in Cincinnati, at what used to be Paul Brown Stadium. And now, I had a friend that was involved in one of his crusades many, many years ago, and it takes about 2 years to organize them. And setting aside for a minute, there's a lot of doctrinal error that gets preached there. I want you to think about what they did when you set aside the error there and things. Before the crusade, the local volunteers there in Cincinnati went through the stadium and they prayed over every seat in that stadium for the person who was going to be sitting there. Probably more than one person. Those crusades usually go on about a week when they held them. That's about 60,000 seats. And they prayed over everyone for the person. Now, have you ever thought about praying for the people that come in and sit in the auditorium or guests that have come in? And, prayed over the seats here? Or how about this? A friend of mine and his wife and I would go out through the neighborhood taking their walks. They would randomly pick a house and pray for the people in that house. Most of them they didn't know and never knew. But there were a few they got to know, and they found out in a couple of cases, at the same time they're praying for this household, there were some problems going on in that household. Some of them were medical, some of them were marital, there was various and sundry things. But have you ever thought about something like that? If you go out and walk, or maybe if you drive through a particular neighborhood regularly, okay, this house here on the corner, I'm going to pray for that household. Or, I'm going to pray, for some of our new Christians, visitors or whatever, and you know where they say, I'm going to pray for them. Think about that. See if maybe something like that works. Praying for total strangers. So think about someone that you know, or even total strangers that you see. It used to be, back when they used to have checkers at the grocery stores, I would go in and I would get to know some of the checkers, and I would go through their line. Now everything's automated, it's a little more difficult to do that. But if you happen to know someone in some of these stores that you're getting to know them, start praying for them. Pray for an open door to share the gospel with them. We need a sense of urgency. This is important. And we need to not be as passive about sharing our faith as we sometimes are. Now you think about it, if somebody has a heart attack and they need bypass, when do they do the bypass? As quick as they can. They might do it right now. I know someone once had to wait about a week because they were a heavy smoker for over 30 years and they needed to do therapy on the lungs. But most people I know, he needs a bypass, we're doing it right now. Or we're doing it maybe first thing in the morning. They do it quickly. It's urgent. You're not going to live very long without your heart functioning properly. Do we see that kind of urgency with the gospel? 2 Corinthians 5, we implore you, he says. That sounds kind of urgent. We implore you, we beg you, we urge you. There's a little bit of urgency there, isn't there? That Paul is giving them. I don't know when the Lord's going to return. I don't know when I'm going to take my last breath, or anybody here is. So don't you think we need to be ready for it? Like the Boy Scout said, be prepared. The Lord might come back this afternoon. Might be next week. It might not be for another 20 years. I don't know. But the idea is to be prepared. And be as urgent about souls as a fire crew racing to save somebody in a blaze. I've never heard of a fire crew that went real slow and did 20 miles an hour to get to a fire. They're usually going pretty quick. And when they're going to emergencies like that, car accidents and things, they've got the lights and the sirens going. They're in a hurry. Are we in a hurry? Do we see the need to save souls, to tell people what they need to do to become a Christian? Here, as we are going into the new year, let's think about what we can do in the new year to win souls. And if you haven't obeyed the gospel and been baptized into Christ, why not do it on New Year's Day? That'd be great. They like to say, New Year, New You. This is the ultimate new you, become a Christian. Be baptized into Christ and raised up to walk on new life, starting over with the Lord. And if we can help you with that, or if you want to study, you want to ask questions, we'll talk to you about it. If you're not comfortable coming forward publicly, I'll talk to you privately. But if the Lord was to come back today, are you ready to go home to be with Him for eternity? And if we can help you to be prepared and you would like to respond, this is the opportunity as we stand and as we sing.